Welcome back to Backstory. Tonight we're talking about Jane and Finch, and when you hear Jane and Finch on TV or read it in the papers, it's usually followed by words like shooting or gang fights. But there are two guys who want to change that, and here's how they're doing it.
What would you think if I were to roll up like this? You'd be scared shitless, right? You'd be scared shitless. I'd be like, yo, give me your money. Give me your motherfucking money, you know what I'm saying?
Tonight on the Fifth Estate, it's a tough way to grow up.
There's certain places where you can't walk, or if you walk, you have to always be on the lookout.
A tough world to navigate.
The real harsh realities of the hood is you can die. Not from a straight bullet, but intentionally. Somebody like intentionally wanted to kill you and shit.
It's the only life they know, so it's even tougher to escape.
I have my days where I just want to get out, but then something will happen, and something just pulls me back all the time.
And joining me are Paul Nguyen and Mark Simms from Jane-Finch.com. First, guys, we showed that piece because you guys actually produced and shot that for CBC, CBC's Fifth Estate. And before we go into what Jane-Finch.com is, I mean, what was it like to go in and do that piece? You had a lot more room to follow it more in-depthly.
Well, I thought it was a good opportunity because, you know, historically the media comes down and they do the story, they do the profiles. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for some people from Jane Finch to, you know, have some input on what goes out there.
What's the difference between, you know, when we go in there, which is, you know, your traditional media, and what you guys do?
Well, I mean, because we live in the community, a lot of the access that we got in the documentary was easy for us to get, because a lot of the people that were in the documentary knew us beforehand. And a lot of the areas that we've been to in the documentary were areas that we all grown up in and we were making movies in from years ago.
Tell us about Jane-Finch.com.
Well, Jane-Finch.com is the media for the Jane and Finch. We cover the positive stories. So, I mean, if there's a shooting, then the national media comes by. But if there's an event or a festival, the media's not there. So we took it upon ourselves to be the people to be there and to cover those stories. And you can watch those clips on our website.
Why was it so important for you guys to do this?
Because it doesn't exist. Plain and simple. And a lot of people also that don't live in the Jane and Finch area have this idea that Jane and Finch is a really bad place. So we want to, you know, show people exactly what Jane and Finch is all about, introduce people to the area with a lot of the good residents that we have inside the area. Also, just, you know, promote a positive image of our home.
And this is why I would like to get your opinion. When you were watching, you know, traditional news over the last few weeks with the shooting of Jordan Manners and the raids on Driftwood, were you shaking your heads? What were you thinking? and no holds barred, you know, feel free.
I was, you know, it's something you gotta expect, right? I mean, the media is always gonna come in the area when there's a lot of violence. I mean, unfortunately, they portray it in a really, really, really bad way. There's a lot of good things that are going on in the neighborhood that people ain't coming there for. We had a huge festival at Driftwood Community Center last weekend, and there was no media except for 105.5, you know? And everybody was out there having fun, barbecuing and playing and talking, and there was no media there.
And typically, a lot of residents, they don't like to talk to the media because they've been burned so much in the past. But, you know, we like to connect with the media and give a voice out there and try to, you know, catch your guys' ears and, you know, push the positive stories, which a lot of people have done in the past, you know, including Dwight Drummond. And he's done a lot of good stories in Jane and Finch, and we really value that. We
keep hearing the word portrayed. And, you know, from our side, there's a shooting, we have to cover that. And we cover it as fact. You know, the shooting happened here at this time, and this is how many people were hurt. And how is that portraying the neighborhood in a bad light? I mean, those are facts. It's
just that people that don't live in the area, when they turn on the news and they hear about Jane and Finch, it's always negative. Never positive, always negative, constantly. So I mean, if I didn't live in Jane and Finch, obviously I'm gonna think that Jane and Finch is a bad area, right?
Does this do a lot of, because you guys grew up there, does this do a lot of damage for kids growing up in Jane and Finch? Is a lot of the stigma that they feel coming from what they see on the news?
I think for the people who are aware, they don't buy into the hype, but some people, unfortunately, they do believe the hype, and some of the residents I know, they decide to move out because of the coverage, and they buy into the media's scoop, and they think it's a very terrible, very scary place.
And it's horrible for a lot of the kids. I mean, we were kids growing up in Jane and Finch, and I remember times where I would go to a nightclub and the bouncer wouldn't even let me inside because I was from Jane and Finch. You know what I mean? Where is he getting this idea from? Is it word of mouth or is it from the media?
Because he's never been to the neighborhood.
He's never been to the neighborhood.
And do you find that when you talk to people who never even visited Jane and Finch, they already have an idea
all
of it?
The time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some reporters come down and they're trying to do a positive story, but one time a reporter did come down from another broadcaster, and they came with bodyguards, so...
Really?
Yeah. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah.
Well, this is the reason why I showed that piece from CBC is because, I've covered these stories, and I just don't get the same access that you do. Mm-hmm. The people who want to, tell me the people who really have the straight goods and the other side of the story, the moment I turned my camera, they said, no, I don't want to talk because I don't want to cause any trouble. So how do you tell those stories when there's nobody to tell them? I mean, it's commendable that you guys are doing it.
I think you got to work towards building the trust. I mean, even we've done quite a few interviews, and we got burned a couple of times where the media or some people twisted the story majorly, and so that kind of put a bad taste in our mouth. But if you guys keep on coming down, doing the positive stories, and trying to get out there, and just coming down on regular days, and I think that will help a lot build that relationship.
Before you weigh in, I'm going to take a call from Janet from Pickering, who wants to weigh in. Janet, you're on Backstory.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on the Jane and Finch issue in terms of the media coverage. Mm-hmm. And I'm not condoning what the media is doing. They have a job to do, and people need to be aware of what's going on. But what I'm looking at is the follow-up story, the positive piece that should be done after. And I mean thereafter, shortly after the negative pieces have been done, because obviously people are going to be alerted at the time. They're vigilant to the TV when the negatives are there. After that, they're gone. They didn't hear any positive story. I don't live in that area, but I've always heard negative things about the Jane and Finch or the vicinity of Jane and Finch, whatever people choose to say. So all I'm saying, do the follow-up after, right after, when people are alert and watching their TV, not like 6 months down the road, a year after, because they have all forgotten about the positive piece and the positive role model and the families that are there that are raising the kid appropriately.
I mean, Janet, you bring up a really great point. I'm in this newsroom every single day, so I know what stories we're doing on a daily basis. And we have continuing coverage on things like Livable City and, Toronto Argo Stop the Violence. But my perception is, as a reporter, is those positive stories don't seem to stick. People don't seem to remember them when I go into Jane and Finch.
Yeah. That's true. Also, I think the media is kind of act like bloodsuckers in a way, if you think about it.
Okay.
Right? Because, if there's a shooting somewhere like, let's say, Brampton or somewhere downtown, and there's a shooting in Jane and Finch at the same time, where do you go? Right? You're not going to go downtown. You're going to come to Jane and Finch because that's where all the action is. People want to hear about all the negativity that's going on in Jane and Finch. Oh my God, there's another shooting in Jane and Finch. It's crazy. Shooting downtown, who cares? Downtown. That stuff happens down there. You know what I mean? No one doesn't really care about that. Everybody wants to hear about what's going on in Jane and Finch. It's a famous place, and that's why our website is doing so well, because of the name, Jane and Finch. You can go to different countries and say Jane and Finch, and people will know what you're talking about. We are the Bronx of America. You know what I mean?
Paul, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think, hopefully more positive stories will come out. Unfortunately, it depends on the viewer, and they're picking up the newspapers and buying all the headlines. Yeah. So, if they control what they read and try to just focus on positive stuff.
And maybe even just media literacy with children, because, it's sometimes you watch the news one day out of the month, and then when you talk to a reporter, it's as if you watch that story every day. Like it's. And before we wrap up this segment, any final thoughts on how we can make this better, bridge the gap again between the perception and what we can, what we can do better? I
just hope that a lot of the audience out there will open their mind and realize that everything is not as it seems on TV. And that if you really want to come to our area and experience what it really is to be in Jane and Finch, I'm pretty sure you'll be surprised at what you see.
Yeah, I think if they want to, they should form their own opinion. Exactly. Take the TTC, go to Downsview Station, take the 108, come to Jane-Finch Mall, and you start there and start walking around, and you'll be surprised how it's not like what the media says.